When I was about 10 years old, I distinctly remember being confused on how my legs could move in time to climb stairs. I mean, like, I was a weird kid and I turned into a weird man, so just ride with me on this because this is 100% true. I used to just wonder, like, how does it work faster? Because, like, what if I'm running up and down the stairs? Because if you're anything like me as a kid, you traveled the stairs as fastly as possible. It's a must. You don't know if there's monsters. You don't know what's going on. My point is, I couldn't understand how that worked. And then I also live in a mountainous region. And so for me, I'd go hiking a lot. And I remember, again, this is 100% true. Probably like in my early to late teens, I was, or mid to late teens, I was hiking and I stumbled on some rocks and I was confused on how I didn't fall. I remember being like, I know this has something to do with balance, but I don't understand how. Well, if you're anything like me, you're one of those weird kids, I can explain that for you. Because in order to do this, we're going to be looking at one of Kenhub's brand new physiology study units. Now, this is part of our larger physiology section. You can see this is a monstrous study unit in the best possible way. It's all about cortical and brainstem control of movement. This is a premium feature, but I strongly encourage you to come check this out because this is, like, the way we build these is so you can learn everything and anything you need to know. And this is built for real physiology. When I say real physiology, I just mean A&P is kind of like physiology light. Whereas if you were taking a true physiology course, then this is going to be exactly what you want to do. Because today we're going to be learning all about movement execution. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit this here. And now we can get a much better view of what's going on. And so what I want to actually do is, because this is a little bit too busy, we're going to break this down piece by piece. And so the first thing we're going to look at is how a movement begins, right? So it all starts here. So you can see the brain, right? We can see the cerebrum, you can see the brainstem, you can also see the cerebellum, and then the diencephalon in the center. Well, this green shaded portion is showing us the motor cortex. So the motor cortex, there's different motor areas. You have like supplementary motor area, primary motor cortex, but the motor cortex, this is where the actual contraction is going to initiate, right? When you say like, because it's, if you can see down here, it's going to the hand. So let's say, you want to go like this, right? And this is the whole goal of it. Well, that starts in your motor cortex. And what's going to happen is that signal is then going to descend. Now, it's going to descend and make its way into the brainstem, but also it is going to split. And what's going to happen is it is also going to send a signal, right? It's going to send an action potential down into the cerebellum, which is what we can see here in purple. So the cerebrum is this highly folded portion, and then this purple is going to be cerebellum. Now, the cerebellum, if you remember from anatomy class, this is going to be all about coordinating muscle contractions. So basically, this is going to be a giant, the location, we'll say that, so that where all of the signals are going to be coming in terms of like the location of your muscles, joints, and those types of things. So what's going to happen is, again, we're going to send the signal down through the brainstem, and it's going to start heading down towards the actual muscles that need to contract, but we're also going to send a signal to the cerebellum. And we're going to come back to that. But let's just keep on following this here. So it's going to go whoop, we go down. Now imagine it's going to go to the spinal cord, then it's going to split out, go out of spinal nerve, so on and so forth, right? Because that's what we can see here. You can see it literally exiting the spinal cord and then heading down, and then it's going to go to the muscle, right? So let's say that, it's going to release acetylcholine. It's going to cause a whole series of a cascade of reactions. It's going to lead to this, right? You're going like this, back and forth, right? That is all well and good. So we achieved the muscle contraction. But if you're anything like me, oftentimes that first round is not so good, right? Especially like if I'm doing something that requires a lot of coordination. Right? Let's say like if I'm playing sports, or not even really playing sports, it could be vacuuming. I swear, the first time I start doing an activity, it's not great. I'm not sitting here saying I'm stumbling around as I'm vacuuming. I'm just saying, it's like your level of precision is not always there immediately, all right? Because here's what's happening is that is occurring. You have, and we can go to this next image, you have all of these sensory neurons that are going to be sending signals back up. All right, so we can see here where it says muscle spindle. So the muscle spindle is, these are basically like two different types of like neurons that are going to be wrapping, well, they're neurons that are wrapping two different types of muscle cells is what I should be saying. It's called like the nuclear chain fiber and the nuclear bag fiber. And the goal with this is what they're doing is they're monitoring how fast a muscle is moving and how far it's moving. And what that's going to do is then send a signal. So this is a sensory signal, right? And it's going to go back up that nerve, go into what's called, we call the dorsal root ganglion. It's going to go to the spinal cord. And what it's going to do is it's going to go right back up into the cerebellum. Because with the cerebellum, remember I said we're going to see that it's all about coordinating muscle activity. But in order to do that, it needs to have the information coming in. So that's exactly what's going on. Basically, right now, as whatever you're doing, right? I'm sitting in my office, I'm sitting in my chair, and I'm going like this. All of the movement my muscles are doing, the position of my muscles and joints, by the way, this is true for joints as well, that information is going to the cerebellum, and the cerebellum is, going to use that information. Because what we need to do is refine movement. We need to make it better. Right? You need to be able to have that initial impulse, but that doesn't mean that you can't make the ongoing movement better. And so, I'm actually like making this seem like it's more exaggerated than it really is. Right? Like, so for example, I have like my water here. So when I go to grab my water, right? I don't want you to think like I grab it and then I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then my body has to figure it out. What we're going to see is I'm going to grab it. And in the process of still contracting that muscle, that's when it's going to start to get refined. In fact, let's go ahead and look at this, right? I should also mention this. This is called the vestibular nucleus. This vestibular nucleus is right by what's called the fourth ventricle. It's on the back side of what's known as the pons in your brainstem. And this is going to be sending information that's coming from your vestibular system, which is in your inner ear. The vestibular division and system, that is all about balance, essentially, right? So as I like turn my head and go like this and all of that, what's happening is there's fluid that's moving in a series of like semicircular canals, and your brain is able to determine if you're moving left, right, up, down, forward, back, and all the three dimensions of space. Well, what's happening is all of that information is also being sent to the cerebellum at the same time, which, if you think about it, this is going to be absolutely essential because it's not just about movement. You need to be balanced in that movement. Right, so if you were just contracting muscles without regarding the balance, it's going to throw you off balance. So these things desperately need to work together. And this is going to be extremely important. So we have the sensory input coming from the muscles and the joints. And then we also have the sensory input coming from the vestibular division in the inner ear. And those are going to then combine in the cerebellum. And what the cerebellum is then going to do is it's going to like basically kind of process this information, and it is then going to send a signal that's basically going to be like working with the signal coming from the motor cortex, right? And that's absolutely essential, right? So the motor cortex is like, here's what I'm doing. And then it goes down to the cerebellum, and the cerebellum's like, okay, I like what you're doing. How about we do it better? And then the cerebellum is going to combine that information, and this is where it's coordinating that skeletal muscle activity. And so it's able to get better. And so this is what I mean. This is happening fast, right? To go back to, 10-year-old Justin confused about stairs. This is all happening in, around 20 thousandths of a second, right? 20 milliseconds. That is a very small amount of time. So as I grab my water, I want you to think like that initial impulse as I make the movement and then I start to lift. Right? At first, there's going to be small amounts of just uncoordinated skeletal muscle activity. But it's going to get refined very quickly due to this process, because then if we see here, it's going to send that signal back down, right? It went up to the motor cortex. The motor cortex is like, oh, okay, I see what we're doing here. This is how we really want to do this. And then it's going to send the signal back down the brainstem, and it's going to go right back out to the muscle, and you're going to get a much better contraction. This is happening so fast that to you it's instantaneous, right? To your human perception, how you are able to process things, your processing speed, this is all instantaneous. So yes, there is a difference here, but I don't want you to think that it's too exaggerated. That would not be good, because then you would be in that exact same position on the stairs. Because, or if you're hiking and you stumble on some gravel or some rocks, to be able to recover and to be able to do these things, it needs to be extremely quick. Because if the head hits the ground, then obviously you get a concussion, traumatic brain injury, those types of things. Okay. And so then, so then here's the other part that's going to be happening. It's going to be sending this information to, this is called the red nucleus. This is going to be up here towards in that midbrain part of the brainstem. And this is going to go to what's called the extrapyramidal system. So basically inside of your brainstem and spinal cord, you have like two different, well, we're going to just put it this way. You have what's like the pyramidal tract and then the extrapyramidal tract and system. The pyramidal tract is more about motor, like conscious motor control, whereas the extrapyramidal system is going to be more about subconscious control, things that are more about refining and things that you just don't, as in like, you don't want to make that choice. Can you imagine, if you had to sit there and be like, whoa, balance it. That's not good, right? You want to be able to make that contraction occur, right? You want to be able to send it from the motor cortex, get it to where it needs to go. And then you want to be able to kind of just relax and let your body kind of take over. You just don't have the processing power for all of that combined, if that makes sense. So this is how it works. So when you think about, running up the stairs or going down the stairs or hiking or anything, you can see how this is all going to be going into effect, right? It's that combination. So if we go put this all back together, you can see it's the motor cortex sending the signal, getting feedback from the muscles. That feedback goes to the cerebellum, and then the cerebellum is like, hey, putting all this information together from your vestibular division, as well as that sensory information from the muscles and the joints, and sending it back up to the motor cortex. The motor cortex is like, that makes sense. We should probably do it better. And then it sends it down, and then you get a more refined activity. And all of this is happening in thousandths of a second. It is absolutely mind-blowing. I always, when I'm in the classroom talking about this, I'm like, I'll look at my students like, you want me to blow your mind? And then I'll do something completely silly like that, because it really is impressive. So again, this is part of a huge, absolutely huge study unit, physiology study unit. That's part of our new physiology section. Strongly encourage you to check this out. We're going to go ahead and leave a 100% free study unit. This is a separate study unit. So this one is all about, motor control, and but we're going to leave a separate link to a separate one on reflex arcs. Reflex arcs are basically, you think about like you hit your knee, and then at the doctor's office and your knee goes up like this. It's going to be talking all about that. You're going to get to see how physiology and how these study units work. We pack so much information into these things. It's absolutely crazy. This is something we've been working a long time on behind the scenes, and so we're really excited to be pushing this out there. So again, you can go ahead and find a link down in the description below. And while you're down there, if you can go ahead, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, we would very much appreciate it. But thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time.